Luigi's Mansion is one of the most delightfully creative games in Nintendo's catalog. It's a game that forgoes a lengthy runtime for a tightly condensed, replayable adventure with an atmosphere and tone unlike other Nintendo games. It's just creepy enough to not cross that fine line of what is suitable for a Mario game. You know, what am I even doing wasting time talking about it? It's Halloween. It's the perfect time to play it again. Alright, sure. As I said in my video on the game earlier this year, the first Luigi's Mansion is a game I have played numerous times. For a while there, it was this wholly unique standalone thing, an experience I couldn't find anywhere else, because Luigi's Mansion wasn't always a series, and for so long, I yearned for a sequel or successor of some kind, one set in a new location with new ghosts to catch and secrets to discover. Maybe they could even broaden the scope a bit, make the new mansion bigger, or hell, maybe they could even have Luigi explore more than one mansion. Call it Luigi's Mansions or something, I don't know. I felt that there was a lot of potential in a proper follow-up to Luigi's Mansion, and nearly 10 years after the original game's release at E3 2011, bam! Luigi's Mansion 2 was announced for Nintendo's latest handheld system, the Nintendo 3DS. I remember that of all the games shown during the conference apart from Skyward Sword, this is the one that caught my eye the most. Not just because it was a game I had been wishing for, but also because of the system it was releasing for. This was looking to be a home console quality title, except it was running on a portable device. I used to be obsessed with the idea of being able to play my GameCube and Wii games on the go, and the 3DS looked like it was the first Nintendo handheld that could make that dream come true. Aside from Smash Bros, this was the game that ultimately made me want a 3DS, and I got one just a couple of months later. Unfortunately, Luigi's Mansion 2 didn't come out until March of 2013. In the 2 years between the reveal and the launch, the game received a name change in certain regions, dropping the 2 and adding the subtitle Dark Moon, and it was also confirmed that the project wasn't being developed in-house, instead being handled by Next Level Games. They're the developers behind the Mario Strikers series and the excellent 2009 Punch-Out Wii game, and their influence is clear as day in the final version, from the game's style to some Easter eggs you can find that reference their other works. It was also revealed that, just as I had hoped for, Dark Moon would have Luigi explore multiple mansions. At the time, I saw this as nothing but an absolute win, failing to take into account the potential concessions that would need to be made for this to be possible on the 3DS. I didn't consider the very real possibility that there was no way that each mansion could match or even surpass the quality of the one in the first game. But after 2 years of waiting, I was just excited that this was even a thing at all. When I got my hands on Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, I played the ever-living hell out of it. And that isn't to say that I played the whole thing multiple times. It's just that my first playthrough clocked in at close to 30 hours because of how much stuff there was to do, from the collectibles to the mission-based ranking system. I really enjoyed the game, and I even considered it to be better than Luigi's Mansion 1 for a while. But then, the honeymoon period wore off. I returned to the game about a year later, and it wasn't exactly as smooth as I had remembered. From EGAD's incessant phone calls to the segmented structure that I was starting to take more notice of, Dark Moon felt like a bit of a chore to play the second time around, which is a stark contrast to how I feel whenever I revisit Luigi's Mansion 1. That second playthrough of Dark Moon retroactively made me realize what exactly it was about the original that made me love it so much in the first place, and why the new game was kind of disappointing. And apparently, I wasn't alone. Luigi's Mansion 2 sort of became infamous among certain groups of fans for betraying what made the original game so special. I wasn't as harsh on the game as some of the opinions I saw online, but at the same time, the more time that passed, the more Dark Moon upset me a little for ultimately not fully living up to my expectations. It's been quite some time since I've completed a full run of this game. In that time, the third Luigi's Mansion came out for the Switch, and just a couple of months ago, the second one got an HD remaster. In celebration of the season, and because my first choice is out of commission, I decided it would be a good idea to revisit Luigi's Mansion 2 and figure out how I feel about the game now. Spoiler warning, I like it. quite a bit in fact, for different reasons than I like the first one. But I'm still going to point out the aspects of the game that I feel hold it back from being truly stellar. The plot of Luigi's Mansion 2 revolves around the sudden disappearance of the subtitular Dark Moon. The Dark Moon is an object that pacified the ghosts of Evershade Valley, making the region a prime paranormal research spot for Professor Egad. But without it, the once docile and friendly ghosts turned hostile, leaving Egad no choice but to hunker down in his lab and enlist the help of none other than Luigi. After being rudely awoken from his nap, Luigi is transported to Egad's lab through his TV, where he's filled in on all the details. Turns out the Dark Moon didn't just vanish from the sky, it broke. And although reluctant to embark on yet another supernatural quest, Luigi agrees to help Egad recover the 5 missing Dark Moon fragments hidden in the 5 nearby mansions and restore peace to Evershade Valley, and hopefully also uncover the mystery of who was behind the Dark Moon's shattering. It's King Boo. Of course it's fucking King Boo. Yeah, so a big plot element of this game is related to figuring out who the unknown party responsible for this mess is, except it's not unknown to the player because the opening cutscene literally shows King Boo using his crown to destroy the Dark Moon. Not to mention that all the marketing and artwork for the game didn't even try to hide the fact that King Boo is the big bad of the game once again. This creates a bit of an awkward narrative dissonance since we know what's really going on, yet Luigi and Egad remain clueless about this for literally most of the game's runtime, even when the answer is practically served to them on a silver platter multiple times throughout the story. The kidnapped Mario story beat from the original returns as well, and this too is not so subtly foreshadowed as early as the second mansion. But again, these two buffoons don't figure it out until the game is almost over. The do you mean that looks familiar to you, Egad? It's like in The Dark Knight when Harvey didn't recognize Joker until he fully unmasked himself. It might seem silly to complain about the story in a Mario game, but I genuinely am not a fan of how dumbed down the characters are this time around. There's having a simple story for the sake of keeping younger audiences engaged, and then there's this. There's even a moment in the final area where you can peek into a window and see King Boo in the goddamn flesh. Or I guess, what the fuck are ghosts made of? Plasma? And I don't know. Anyways, Luigi sees him right there, turning these poor Toad assistants into paintings, and he tells Egad nothing. I don't know, call me crazy, but I think this is pressing information to share. To be fair, the official reveal happens upon starting the next mission, but like, come on, man. I think what exacerbates this issue more for me is just how much longer this game is compared to the first one. So it makes it harder to just brush off just how stupid Luigi and Egad seem to act. Though I guess I shouldn't expect much from the guy who sold his freaking ghost portrait machine in a garage sale. The mission to rescue Mario also feels a little forced in this story, like a pointless way to link the game to its predecessor. They didn't need to reuse this plot point if you ask me, especially since Luigi isn't even aware he has to save his brother again until the last hour. I think repairing the Dark Moon was enough of a solid foundation and motivator for this plot. Then again, if Mario wasn't here, we wouldn't have this absolutely adorable cutscene.
Ah, Luigi, you saved Mario. I did it. Way to go. Number 1.
Where Luigi's Mansion 2 story lacks in having a compelling mystery, it makes up for with its excellent character moments and cutscene direction. The charm levels in this game are off the charts. There's a much greater focus on humor in the sequel, and the physical comedy most notably is very entertaining. Very slapstick in nature and reminds me of old Tom and Jerry and Looney Tunes cartoons. It's pretty great. And the game is just full of all kinds of small details that you can't help but smile at. Egad has some pretty funny lines, particularly when he pokes fun at Luigi, and as for Luigi, I mean, if the first game didn't make you fall in love with his expressiveness, then this game certainly will, unless you have no soul. His reactions to the ghosts and those frequent moments where he acts like a clumsy, lovable dork make him such a fun character to play as and follow. And his personality really gets to shine in cutscenes, which there are plenty of, and they're all elevated by the superb animation and camera work. Seriously, this and the third game raised the bar so high for the visual storytelling potential of this series. Considering these are all running in-engine, this is incredibly impressive for the 3DS. for Switch on the other hand. So I've mainly been showing footage of Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, as it's the version I elected to play through for this video. Before I say anything else, I'm gonna say that this is the version of Dark Moon you should be playing in the year of our Lord 2024. It's objectively, God I hate that word, the best version of the game. Just wanted to get that disclaimer out of the way before going into just how puzzling this remaster is to me. Dark Moon on the 3DS, as I mentioned already, was damn impressive on a technical level for that system. Big sprawling adventure games that looked and played as well as Dark Moon weren't so commonplace at the time on Nintendo handhelds. I think it's easy in these modern times where we have devices like the Switch and Valve's Steam Deck to take the privilege of being able to play games of this caliber portably for granted. But when you put Dark Moon on a considerably much more powerful system than the 3DS, and barring some clear upgrades in the resolution and model quality, it doesn't look drastically better than that original version. It's easy to see why this HD remaster was met with such disappointment and contempt, considering both the $60 price tag and the graphical masterpiece that is Luigi's Mansion 3 that came out 5 whole years ago. This feels like a very low effort remaster, and it honestly goes beyond the underwhelming presentation. The original was plagued with all sorts of visual bugs and inconsistencies that weren't ironed out or fixed in the HD version. Almost none of the criticisms against the original were addressed either. EGAD can still call you upwards of 6 times during a single mission with no option to disable it, and no tweaks were made to the original's flawed gold system, not even a new upgrade to unlock to at least remedy the issue a little bit. I appreciate that the frame rate is consistent now compared to the 3DS version's jittery appearance that resulted from its uncapped frame rate, but 30 FPS when this is the graphical upgrade we got? It's a bit of a letdown. Honestly, the mere existence of LM3 is really what makes LM2 HD look far worse than it probably is in reality. The difference is night and day, or I guess night and prettier night. I don't want to harp on comparisons between the two for too long, especially since I already know I'm going to dedicate time to gushing about the presentation of the third game when I eventually get around to making a video on it. So instead, I'm going to compare it to Metroid and Paper Mario. This is what ultimately baffles me about the way Nintendo labels and prices their remakes and remasters. Metroid Prime Remastered's assets were all basically built from the ground up, and it barely looks like it was originally a GameCube game. $40. Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door is also pretty much built from scratch, and it paid off immensely as it is now visually consistent with Origami King on the same system. And this version offers a plethora of quality of life changes that directly address issues from the original. Sure, the game is now 30 FPS instead of 60, but it feels somewhat justified and understandable when looking at how big of a leap the Switch version is on a technical level. $60, a little more than Prime Remastered, but to be fair, this is a much bigger game and it clearly had more work put into it on the gameplay side of things, in addition to getting a visual update. Also keep in mind, these are enhanced versions of GameCube titles, a home console where they originally retailed for 50 smackaroos. Dark Moon, a 3DS game, launched with an MSRP of $40, and the HD version's updates are weak when put up against these other two games. That'll be $60 please. Thank God for alternatives. Again, just to remind everybody, I still think this is the best version of the game to play, and technically the only version you're allowed to play, but it definitely could have been a lot better. It's a lot like Skyward Sword HD now that I think about it. The Switch is arguably the best place to experience both of these, but it's difficult to stomach the asking prices when you notice just how little was changed. But enough about that. How does the game hold up after all this time? Well, as I hinted at earlier, pretty damn well for the most part. Luigi's Mansion 2 has a much different design philosophy than the original. Instead of a seamless tour through one mansion, the second game opts for a new structure, where progression across the 5 mansions you explore is separated into missions. Once you complete the mission's objective, which, mind you, can change and transform mid-mission to keep you on your toes, you are booted out of the mansion via the pixelator and can select the next mission once back in EGAD's bunker. What do you know, that's 2 videos in a row where I talk about boot out mechanics in video games. In retrospect, Luigi's Mansion 2 is sort of designed like a 3D Mario game, specifically Sunshine and Galaxy 1 and 2. Each mission confines you to a certain part of the mansion, though there are exceptions to this, and each time you return to a mansion, there is usually some kind of change in the level for the sake of servicing the new objective you're asked to complete. This leads to a ton of gameplay variety, the likes of which didn't really exist in the original game. Whereas LM1 kept things fresh by throwing new portrait ghosts your way, and periodically granting you access to new chunks of the mansion throughout the campaign, LM2 is constantly introducing new ideas and gimmicks through its diversity of objectives and puzzles that spice up the way you explore the mansions. As some of you might know, the mission structure is often referenced as the fatal flaw of Luigi's Mansion 2. Some people aren't a fan of how you're being taken out of the mansions all the time in this game, that it makes the pacing feel disjointed and padded out since it occasionally requires you to do some backtracking, the bane of all gamers, and it has an adverse effect on immersion, something that the original game excelled at. And I agree. The mission setup of Dark Moon severely hinders my enjoyment of the game if I judge it as the meticulously crafted, non-stop, atmospheric, survival horror-esque experience that the first game was. But this isn't the first game. For the past couple of years, I have been making an attempt to judge games more for what they're trying to achieve and less for not being something that the directors and artists might not have even been going for. This is something I've brought up in other videos already. And this very line of thinking is what led me to appreciate games like Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword more than I used to. This doesn't mean that I just throw what I personally enjoy completely out the window though. In my perfect world, a Luigi's Mansion sequel would be closer in design and vibes to the original. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and much of what I love about it is either absent or greatly de-emphasized in the second game. If I really wanted to, I could nitpick and complain to hell and back about all the ways I wish LM2 was more like LM1. The tone and visuals are nowhere near as dark or gloomy, the ghosts act more like pranksters than real threats to Luigi, the art design is way more cartoonish and no longer strikes that perfect balance of stylization and realism, and of course, I found the natural exploration of the first game's mansion to be more compelling in an atmospheric sense than any of the mansions in the second game. But I don't think Luigi's Mansion 2 was ever meant to be just like its predecessor. It was a new project with new goals, and at the end of the day, the final product turned out to be pretty darn great. There is so much creativity that oozes from each mission in this game. The puzzles this time around are a lot more interactive and multi-layered than in the first title, and the artists went all out on pushing the concept of a haunted house to its limits by having Luigi explore all of these diverse locations, and the changes in scenery are used to their fullest potential, with all sorts of new challenges and secrets that take advantage of the new settings, which I believe is the game's greatest strength. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, and I do have other minor complaints about the structure that are removed from it simply being different than the original, but I'll save those for later. For now, before I get into specifics about the levels and exploration, I want to touch on the combat really quick. If you remember from my video on the first game, I adored the visceral nature of Luigi's Mansion 1's ghostbusting mechanics, achieved by the feedback you got from the GameCube controller's rumble and the tactility from flicking the analog sticks as they made contact with the notches of the gamepad's chassis. It effectively sold the feeling of you physically wrangling these ghosts in a satisfying tug-of-war-like struggle. Luigi's Mansion 2 reworked the ghost catching in a way that, while different, I personally feel doesn't betray the satisfaction I got from the original game's combat. Stunning ghosts now requires you to hit them with a bright flash from the strobe bulb. You charge the flash by holding the A button, and you release the button to let it loose, and any ghosts caught in this wide vicinity become vulnerable to Luigi's poltergust. There's a lot of strategy that comes with a strobe bulb, since you can either utilize quick, partial charges that require more precision as they cover a smaller area, or take more time to build up the charge to try to stun multiple ghosts at once, at the risk of leaving yourself open to getting hit. You are greatly rewarded for capturing multiple ghosts at the same time though, as their health will deplete faster and they'll drop a lot more gold. Speaking of, ghosts drop money when you finish them off with the new Power Surge ability. See, the HP of ghosts doesn't drop very fast with ordinary sucking. The rate at which their energy is drained is no longer determined by how fiercely you tilt the analog sticks as you fight against the ghost's attempts to escape. You'll mainly be relying on the Power Surge now, which takes a little bit of time to charge up to deal massive damage, especially once you start upgrading it. As I stated, you are rewarded with gold if you can capture a ghost with a Power Surge, and the amount of gold they drop depends on both how much you manage to fill the meter before letting it rip and how many ghosts you were able to start vacuuming up. And since you still have to pull the ghost towards you with the control stick to build up the meter, this creates an incredibly exciting and strategic combat system. Learning how to maximize your power surge and use your strobe bulb optimally to get as many ghosts as you can in one go feels really good. The sound design has a lot to do with that, and another clear benefit of the HD version is the addition of controller rumble. Though there are a limited number of enemy types, much like the original, the way the game makes you deal with different types of ghosts at once works wonders for keeping each encounter engaging. Sneakers, similar to the first game's grabbing ghosts, use their invisibility to get the jump on Luigi, but clues in the environment such as water ripples can give away their approximate location. Hiders like hiding in cabinets and other furniture, and throw projectiles while you're dealing with other ghosts. Creepers force you to stay diligent about where you step, and greenies, the most basic enemy type, can use rolling pins and shovels as weapons, welding helmets and sunglasses as shields from your strobe bulb, the latter of which can be forcefully removed from their faces with your poltergust, and they can even possess suits of armor and dress up as mummies, basically creating two whole new enemy types with new attacks and weaknesses to learn. Oh yeah, Luigi has a dodge maneuver now as well. That doesn't grant you any invincibility frames, and using the dodge resets your power surge meter so that you don't abuse it too much, but it can definitely save you in a pinch when the action gets hectic. One of my favorite missions in the game, the final regular mission as a matter of fact, Paranormal Chaos in the Treacherous Mansion, demonstrates the ghost catching at its best. It is the ultimate combat test as you face wave after wave of enemies you fought throughout the adventure, and it doesn't get tedious because of how well each component of the combat harmonizes with one another. It's a pity then that the boss fights are not really anything special, and in fact, some of these I find to be flat out poor. The spider boss that caps off the Gloomy Manor really is the peak of this game's boss design. It's a clever marriage of both the combat and puzzle solving sides of the gameplay, with each phase progressively getting trickier and more challenging. This ice monster I don't really mind either. A little gimmicky, but at least it's unique. Every other boss though, they're absolute jokes. The staircase boss can never hit you as long as you run in a circle. The Nightmare's last phase is cool for the spectacle of it all, but the first two phases just recycle the night enemies from an earlier mission. And speaking of shamelessly recycling regular enemies, the old Clockworks boss is just a lame ass enemy gauntlet. There are many bosses in this game that are better than this, though they aren't anything too special either. My favorite one is probably the first Poltergeist, and that's largely because of the lead up to the fight. The normal Gloomy Manor theme is replaced by the piano coming from the library, which is pretty creepy. There aren't many genuinely chilling moments like this in Dark Moon, so I appreciate this. And yes, I did say this is the first Poltergeist, because this ghost design is used 2 more times after this, and the Three Sisters feel like a half-assed attempt to have a portrait ghost-like boss without any of the personality that made Luigi's Mansion 1's portrait ghost so memorable. You know what, I almost forgot about Boolossus. This fight is pretty neat all things considered, with how you have to pop him like a balloon like last time, but now you have to launch the smaller boos into these train carts with proper timing by pulling on their tongues. And no, I don't care if his official name in Dark Moon is just Big Boo. It's Boolossus, damn it. That's even his name in the Japanese version. King Boo is also alright. It's hard to top how epic the final boss of Luigi's Mansion 1 was, admittedly, and if we're judging it on spectacle, this is a pretty worthy King Boo fight, especially these pseudo 2D sections where you're running away from him and making split-second decisions to swerve around the obstacles in your way. It's just, yeah, he's not too difficult to defeat at all. I think I've spent enough time on the action part of this action-adventure game by now, so let's segue into talking about the adventure proper. Like I mentioned, Luigi's Mansion 2 is particularly good in its use of inventive concepts that really make this feel like a rich and meaty quest, and the game steadily gets more and more sophisticated with its ideas. The Gloomy Manor is your ordinary, run-of-the-mill haunted house archetype. It's the closest you'll get to a mansion like the one in the first game. While not as big as that first mansion, the Gloomy Manor is still surprisingly dense and lavishly architected, with hidden passages to various rooms and even small outdoor sub-areas that sell the illusion of this being a residence that EGAD lived and conducted research in before the story kicked off. The hallway with the suits of armor was etched into my brain since that very first trailer, and while the puzzles here aren't anything spectacular, especially when compared to what later mansions have in store, the Gloomy Manor is still a solid opening level overall. By the 4th mission here, you'll acquire a new ability, the Dark Light device. lights. This attachment to Luigi's flashlight can reveal objects in the environment that were made invisible by these spirit orbs. I think this is a great new mechanic that enhances exploration by encouraging you to be even more astute of your surroundings than ever before, to notice things that may appear off or out of place. The game's mission structure actually plays a big part in this as well. Sometimes a piece of furniture that was visible in one mission might not be in another mission. This is your indication to use the Darklight device to reveal it, and you'll likely be rewarded with gold or possibly even a gem or a boo to catch. And here's where I start getting negative again. I swear I like this game, just hear me out. The actual rewards you get from searching for collectibles and secrets in Luigi's Mansion 2 are pitiful, and it's kind of a spit in the face considering how thoroughly enjoyable and well designed the exploration is in this game otherwise. Gold returns from Luigi's Mansion 1, and there is plenty of it to be found by inspecting furniture, optimally catching ghosts, flashing the strobe bulb at certain critters, clearing bonus rooms accessed through interdimensional rifts. It's everywhere. The gold you collect is invested into increasing the power surge and darklight meters, and by the end, upgrading the power of the poltergust itself. But after that, gold is basically rendered obsolete. The amount of money you collect in a mission does contribute to a final rank for said mission, alongside other factors like how fast you completed it and how much damage you took, but I don't know if it's just me. I couldn't give two shits about ranks in Dark Moon like I used to. In the original, the rank you got at the end of the game was also determined by the amount of gold you managed to collect. Getting the best rank was no walk in the park though, and required proper diligence in locating enough treasure to earn it, and the fruits of your labor were well defined. You'd get a picture of Luigi's extravagant new mansion surrounded by a shiny frame. This type of visual reward even extended to the paintings of the portrait ghosts that changed based on your performance during those boss fights. In the second game, your skill and treasure hunting adeptness is nowhere near as fulfilling, when all you really get for your efforts is a nicer looking JPEG on a level select screen. Sure, this is also a JPEG, but it's one with inherently more intrinsic value to the player. The upgrades to your vacuum are cool, but even on my first playthrough, I had fully maxed that thing out by the end of Haunted Towers, less than halfway through the story. Wouldn't it have been great if your mission rank also unlocked something in the vault as an homage to the original's gallery? Maybe dioramas of the mansions or specific rooms to complement the viewable models of the ghosts here, or hell, even something that would require less effort like a concept art gallery? No. The most interesting things here, and I'm really stretching the definition of interesting, are these trophies of Luigi in different poses that you earn by collecting all the gems in each mansion. Yeah, this is what the gems are for in Dark Moon, which, I mean, hey, it could have been worse. Collecting them all could have amounted to absolutely nothing instead, right? See, I could have given you nothing for cleaning my car, yet here I am gifting you this paper airplane for your hard work. You're welcome. Now, if gems had a large monetary value associated to them like in the first game, they'd still be unremarkable to collect. Did you not just hear me bitch about how useless gold is? And what do you get for finding all the booze in a mansion? A new mission where you run around catching ghosts to get more gold. You know, in case the ton of money you find in regular missions isn't enough. You see how this all comes back around to the diminished role of gold in this game? Look, I'd be lying if I said there isn't a bit of pleasure I get from simply seeing that shiny number go up. What can I say? I love gold. And no, I'm not compensated in the way I'd like for going out of my way to get all the gems and booze, but I do it anyway because it gives me an excuse to comb through these elaborately crafted sandboxes from top to bottom, which I must stress is incredibly fun in its own right. I just wish that the prizes for collecting all of this stuff amounted to more than some pointless medals and lackluster extras. And I hate that I'm gonna complain about this all over again in Luigi's Mansion 3, albeit for slightly different reasons. There are good ideas here in Dark Moon with the upgrade system, and maybe all that was needed were some tweaks to the cost of each upgrade so that all that money you obtain in the back half of the journey isn't trivialized. And if I can just get one more criticism out of the way, I'm not a fan of how inconsistent gem hunting can be. I hinted at how I like that there are secrets specific to certain missions to keep an eye out for, but sometimes this can result in a gem becoming impossible to collect for reasons that feel artificial and arbitrary. I think this wouldn't be a problem if the game allowed gems to also be collected in missions that come after the earliest possible mission the gem is available in, but this isn't always the case, either because you're locked into a selective area of the level as I mentioned previously, or because the gem is simply no longer there. I'm fine with things like flowers and safes no longer containing gold in later missions even if they did in earlier ones, but when this weird logic also applies to primary collectibles, then it kind of gets on my nerves. It gives me war flashbacks, you know? And it's a pain in the ass to have to revisit missions if you missed a gem or a boo, since you have to do the entire mission over again for your progress to save. Also, try to be mindful about what might trigger the call from EGAD that ends the mission, because once it happens, you cannot backtrack for anything you may have missed, or to get something you just happen to remember in the moment. I forgot that I missed a crap ton of gems in E-3, and I only realized this after I interacted with the set piece that ends the mission. And that is why I do not have the last Luigi statue. Oh no, however will I get a good night's sleep knowing I didn't? I'm not as cynical towards Dark Moon's fragmented setup as I used to be, but stuff like this kinda makes me wish that the HD remaster went the extra mile and added a continuous mode or something along those lines, where you can just clear out each mansion from beginning to end with no interruptions, or at the very least the option to exit missions while still retaining your gem and boot progress. And again, an option to turn off these phone calls. Holy shit, Gad, leave me the hell alone! You're worse than YouTube comments that repeat stuff I already know. At least your ringtone is cool. The thing is, once you put the flawed reward system and pacing issues that arise from Dark Moon's boot-out system aside, you're left with levels that radiate imagination and ingenuity, with masterfully constructed layouts and objectives that make this one of the most fun adventure games I've ever played. If you weren't impressed by the gloomy manor's decidedly generic take on a haunted house, every other mansion that follows it brings something previously unseen to the table. Haunted Towers has this organic forest theme with new plant-based enemies and environmental puzzles, and a bunch of vegetation littered throughout the premises. You can see how nature overtook this place and how it has left the area in a dilapidated state, in serious need of maintenance. The first mission here, titled A Job for a Plumber, sees Luigi rebooting the mansion's water system, which completes the first step needed to enter the inside of the giant hollow tree and activates a generator near the entrance, conveniently opening up the right tower for investigation when the next mission tasks you with finding 5 pieces of a pinwheel. That last part does reveal another complaint that a lot of people have about Dark Moon. There is a bit of repetitiveness in its design when the story will suddenly halt and force you to retrieve X number of parts needed to repair some gizmo to progress. Sure, these moments can be a little annoying, especially since many times you'll see the ghosts run off with the contraptions you need during a cutscene, but while these missions can feel like padding since they involve treading old ground, you'll predominantly be exploring new rooms on these occasions, so that's why I don't really mind these too much. Haunted Towers also introduces 2 other types of objectives, escorting toads and chasing down the Polterpup. The toad escort missions are quite good, as many of the puzzles involve figuring out how to safely get Toad past certain hazards, and unlike escort missions in other games, toads don't really get in your way here. If anything, they help you by grabbing gold and gems that are out of reach. Also, the interactions between them and Luigi are so gosh darn endearing. Plus, just listen to this.
Come on.
And people say this game sucks. As for the Polterpup missions, unfortunately, can't say I have much good to say about these. Well, let me be more specific. The introductory Polterpup mission is one I don't look forward to. The later ones at least guide you to previously unexplored parts of their respective mansions. While I was able to defend the scavenger hunt objectives, the Polterpup's first appearance is actual padding. There's nothing new about this mission. You're just going through rooms you've already been in and tracking this mutt down with the dark light, but you'll still be at the mercy of these scripted sequences where the Polterpup will run circles around Luigi and escape yet again more times than I personally care for. He is very cute though, I can't deny that. And if you manage to find a gold bone in a mission and then lose all your health, the Polterpup will actually swoop in and revive you. These should always be a priority to find, because if you die mid-level, you restart from the very beginning. Considering the mission structure was likely conjured to suit the portable nature of the 3DS cause, you know, quick play sessions and all, the lack of a checkpoint system is frankly baffling when some of these missions can go on for well over half an hour on your first playthrough. And at the risk of beating a dead horse, fixing this is yet another simple quality of life change that the HD version just didn't implement for some reason, and I'm showing footage of the 3DS version running on an emulator with a higher resolution to further highlight the underwhelming graphics boost. Why did I buy this again? Well, I guess I just really wanted a reason to revisit the old Clockworks, Dark Moon's third mansion, and my personal favorite of the bunch. I am a sucker for mechanical spinning gear themed puzzles, which this mansion is filled to the brim with. I really like the art of this mansion too. The brown tones that paint the building and its wooden floors as well as the underground area. The night sky is basically pitch black here, but with these gorgeous red streaks decorating it. It is mesmerizingly eerie. The ultimate goal in this mansion is to find some missing clock hands to open this giant clock-shaped door that leads to the Dark Moon piece at the top of the clock tower, and exploring the facility to find them reveals just how detailed the place is beneath the surface, both metaphorically and literally. The second mission takes you to the aforementioned underground part of the Clockwork Factory. The aesthetic is very evocative of ancient ruins with an abandoned dig site, kind of like something you'd see in a Tomb Raider or Uncharted game. It's a really cool and unexpected contrast to all the modern machinery and gadgets you interact with above the surface, giving you a mix of two flavors of environmental puzzle solving to do. I adore this place, and it's easily the highlight of the main quest to me, as long as I ignore the boss, that is. This isn't to say that the remaining two mansions are slouches though. The secret mine is the area I frequently see regarded as the best in the game, and yeah, it is incredibly good. Absolutely love the snowy setting here, and combined with the quiet comfort once inside the log cabin with the flames emitting from the chimney fireplace, the opening section of this level has such a cozy vibe. I said opening section because, similar to the old Clockworks, the secret mine is initially misleading in how intricate and large the level actually is. Not long into the first mission, the Toad assistant you're tasked to rescue here breaks the icy floor he and Luigi are standing on, sending them tumbling into the depths of the mining area. This is where this level shines as you descend deeper and deeper into the mining complex, sliding down icy slopes, crossing rickety bridges, and taking rides over perilous chasms, eventually uncovering these magic crystals the boos are using to enhance the power of the ghosts. There is a lot of variety in the secret mine, despite there only being 3 missions here. But I found that the short length works in this mansion's favor, as it naturally has fewer dull moments because of it, even though the last mission does have some lengthy backtracking. But the level designers were at least considerate enough to include a portal in this would-be dead end that conveniently places you near your next objective if you play your cards right. And finally, we have the Treacherous Mansion. The build-up to this place, the act of just making it to the front door, is so good at establishing a degree of danger befitting of an endgame level. The way the bit of remaining ground here just crumbles beneath Luigi as he has to carefully scooch along the tapered path lest he fall into the ravine, it's all so aptly treacherous, really. And while I do like the old Clockworks and Secret Mine a little more in terms of their theming, the museum setup of the Treacherous Mansion, with the place being primarily split up into exhibits, is worthy of its own praise. The place is positively more spooky and gothic than the other mansions. It almost feels like an aesthetic continuation of the Gloomy Manor, just a lot more medieval, I guess. I mean, there's an entire underground dungeon and catacombs area you have to navigate through before you're even able to step foot into the mansion proper. This section contains one of my favorite dark light based puzzles too, where you materialize a bomb from this painting to blow up a wall in the jail area. And speaking of puzzles, the Treacherous Mansion goes all out with the portals that were briefly used in the secret mine. At first, they appear to be nothing more than handy shortcuts linking each wing of the museum to the front entrance, but then you start having to carry things with your vacuum, like buckets of water and balls of web lit on fire, through these portals to interact with something in another exhibit. This type of out-of-the-box thinking tests you on every kind of challenge you've seen by this point. The portals also play into why I like the Paranormal Chaos mission so much. I didn't mention until now that this mission is also timed. The rooms on your map will change color from green to yellow to red to signal how close they are to dimensional collapse. To ensure you make it to these rooms on time, effective use of the portals to cut down on travel time is imperative. The Treacherous Mansion appropriately feels like the final trial in this long journey, testing both your problem solving and ghost wrangling skills by the end of it. Also, this puzzle on the roof is such a neat callback to the observatory from the first game. Shame that you don't get the star-shaped gem from it though. Do any of these mansions capture the same atmosphere and identity of the original mansion? No, but again, I don't think that was the primary intention. In no offense to LM1, playing LM2 feels more like playing through a proper video gamey video game, you get me? With carefully curated level compositions that develop with increasingly complex puzzles and pathfinding. Luigi's Mansion 1 was more about the experience and grounding the player in a convincing and immersive haunted setting, with gameplay elements from survival horror games to string it all together. Once I realized this, Luigi's Mansion 2, or Dark Moon, or whatever you want to call it, became a lot easier to appreciate. Yes, it's no secret that I like Luigi's Mansion 1 more. I love just how replayable and compact that experience is. A go-to game for me to revisit every October. But now, after my most recent playthrough of the sequel, I don't think it'd hurt to come back to this one every couple of years. It is insanely charming and just a joy to play. I may have some problems with its pacing and inherently less replayable nature due to its lack of incentive to collect gold and gems and booze, but I still think it's a good game and worthy of your time. Just maybe not worth $60 for the HD remaster if you've already played it or own it on the 3DS. Hell, I didn't even mention the Scare Scraper, this score attack side mode that may actually make the price of the Switch version easier to stomach if you're into this kind of thing. It can be pretty fun, I'll admit, and there are even exclusive ghost variants here not found in the main quest. It also supports local and online multiplayer, because you can never have too much Luigi on your screen. The best part about this though?
Help, help, hey, help, help, hey.
Scratch what I said earlier, they should have priced this at $70. Anyways, that's all I've got for now. Happy Halloween everybody, hope you have a good one. Take care, and as always, thanks for watching.